Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It has been often noted that Jewish tradition loves a good workaround for a difficult situation of Jewish law. For example, if you're in an unexpected or unavoidable situation that might lead you to break Shabbat by doing something, you can avoid the trespass sometimes by doing that thing in an unusual way. It's called the shinui. By not doing a potentially prohibited something normally, it basically becomes as if you avoided doing the forbidden thing altogether. You gotta love Jewish law. Another such helpful Shabbat workaround is the establishment of the Shabbat Eruv. Because carrying items in the public domain or between public and private domains is technically forbidden on Shabbat, the Eruv can step in to make a neighborhood or even the entirety of, say, Manhattan into one big private domain. And of course, you can move things around in the comfort of your own house, even if that home is an entire metropolitan area. These workarounds or just-in-case methods of dealing with the imperfection of real-life situations extend into many areas of Jewish law, including kashrut, holiday laws, and many more. But the other side of this are the situations where, feeling very clever, we love to propose workarounds for situations that really just defeat the purpose of the law or simply don't work. I have had many such propositions from well-intentioned fellow Jews and non-Jews alike, who, when I tell them an issue I have with being able to do such and such a thing because of Jewish law, offer a number of, well, what if X? What if I take notes for you on Shabbat? What if you just picked out the bacon? What if you come to the music festival after services? All these are trying to solve the problem, but actually missing the purpose of doing the observance in the first place. In rabbinic tradition, this is partly how Korah, the titular villain of our Torah portion, becomes the rebel who stands up to Moses and Aaron's leadership. In part, this is based on the rabbis noting what comes right before Korah's rebellion in the Torah, the command to wear tzitzit on the corners of four-cornered garments. Specifically for Korah, the command to put techelet, the special dye, on those tzitzit. The story goes that Korah went to ask Moses what may have been an honest question, but reads as another one of those klutz kashas, or stump the rabbi questions. He asks, what's the halacha about a four-cornered garment that is dyed completely blue? Does it also need tzitzit? Moses answers, yes, it still needs tzitzit. This infuriates Korah. How does that make any sense? If the purpose of tzitzit is to look at the blue color and think of God's heavens, then how does an entirely blue talis not fulfill that obligation? In his anger and disbelief, the Midrash goes on to say that Korah went to gather his followers by using Moses' answer to show that he was just making these laws up. They're not from God, as he claims. And so, having won the people over, he prepared 250 such talitot that were entirely blue but without tzitzit, and draped the 250 tribal leaders who he garnered in those talitot as a symbol of Moses' misuse of his authority. They wouldn't stand for what was clearly an overreach of power by Moses and an indicator that he was pulling the strings all along. So they draped themselves in techelet as a brazen display that they are simply not going to take it anymore. When Moses comes to try to appease them, that is the point when Korah speaks up saying in our Torah, you've gone too far. Why do you raise yourself above the community? All the people are holy and God is in their midst. Talk about an overreaction. According to our rabbis, it is this bit of minute argument around the rules of tzitzit that dragged Korah and the people into a disastrous backlash from God. Korah, Datan, and Aviram, and their families all swallowed by the earth, with the 250 men who followed them engulfed in the flames of their incense offering, and thousands more after dying in a plague. The question is then, what was the true motivation behind Korah's question? If he was really trying to get to a deeper understanding of the law, why did he get so upset at Moses' answer? And why would he be punished for asking a question? I think in this midrash we have to conclude that Korah's question was not a genuine discussion of halakha. Rather, it was a question perfectly formulated for him to get an unsatisfying answer. It was a question made to try to lessen the burden of this command of God, keeping some of the idea behind tzitzit involved, the blue, but not enough to fully match the experience of wearing tzitzit. In a sense, it was a question asked by a person who doesn't really want to do the mitzvah in the first place. It comes from the cynical starting assumption that these mitzvot are kind of pointless and weird. Couldn't we just get the same effect without so much trouble? Why bother having to tie and dye these strings in special ways when we can just wear a nice blue shirt? If we could only get around doing this commandment, things would be so much easier. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I have never shared such a sentiment. I'm sure at times we all have felt that it would be easier if we didn't have all these commandments hanging over our heads. And I certainly have heard my share of questions for the rabbi that are trying to find ways to get around doing the mitzvah completely. Maybe Korah really wanted to do fewer mitzvot. Or maybe he just wanted to find any small thing that would start a rebellion so he could gain more power. But either way, the question itself is the inciting incident for the rabbis. And it is one of deep cynicism when it comes to God, to Moses' bona fides, and to the mitzvot themselves. It's a cynicism that knows the answer before asking it, but hopes the person of authority will see how ridiculous they sound and also become cynical like them. Last week, I spoke about tzitzit being reminders for God's mitzvot, but also visible symbols of holding on to hope. You wear the tzitzit so you don't become like the spies who wanted to give up on the purpose of the Exodus, who felt cynical that God would possibly help them succeed in the face of giant people in fortified towns. People who were ready to throw away their whole relationship with God in their fear. They were scouting out a reason not to believe, not to have hope. The tzitzit are supposed to be the antidote to that. They are a commandment that is supposed to be a reminder to do the commandments. You will see them and you will remember all the commandments of Adonai, to do them so that you should not scout out after your hearts and after your eyes that you give up your desires to. In this midrash, Korah does not want to accept that the purpose of Judaism is doing mitzvot. He wants to find a workaround that leaves out a major piece of the commandment, the tzitzit themselves. His cynical question is a direct challenge to faith and hope that wearing tzitzit are supposed to instill. Moses does not back down. He affirms that you have to have the tzitzit themselves. You cannot get rid of the mitzvah, and you cannot get rid of the purpose underlying it. For Korah, that was unacceptable, putting him in direct opposition to God, Torah, and Moses. Now, Judaism, I admit, has many quirky and strange laws and details. It's an ancient system and tradition all its own that sometimes puts us at odds with the surrounding non-Jewish society in which we live. Oftentimes, we may not fully understand or accept the internal logic of Jewish practice or interpretation. And that is natural. But when confronted with these practices, I would encourage us first to try to listen and understand the reasoning behind what we do before going straight to what we think is right. Yet we should ask questions and challenge, yes, but we should also have some humility about the fact that we might not fully understand the thing that we think we're against. We should work to avoid emulating this tradition about Korah, asking questions only to make the person who values the tradition feel silly or backwards. We should instead ask only the questions that are real questions, machlokot l'shem shamayim, arguments trying to get a deeper understanding, rather than questions that prove that you were right all along. And this story about Korah and Moses comes to remind us that the tzitzit are important. Each mitzvah is important, whether we fully understand it or not, because each mitzvah reminds us that our hope is not lost. Our rabbis tell us that the reward for a mitzvah is in fact the opportunity to do another mitzvah. Each is an obligation, but also a reward in and of itself. When we seek out what is rewarding in each practice of Judaism, we strengthen our ties like the knots of the tzitzit, which represent the interconnectedness of the commandments. And we cultivate curiosity and hope rather than dismissal and cynicism. May we all reaffirm our commitment to each mitzvah that comes our way, and may we stay open to being surprised by what they can bring into our lives. Shabbat Shalom.